After phase one of the initial It's Only Rock and Roll recording sessions wrapped in November of 1973, the Rolling Stones took a 3-month break, then reconvened in Musicland Studios in Munich from February 8th to the 13th, and then February 20th to March 3rd for more sessions. This would be the first album in 6 years without Jimmy Miller as producer. Instead, production duties fell to the Glimmer Twins, aka Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Andy Johns was the engineer for the sessions, with George Takantz as engineer for Overdubs. Mick Taylor would be present for this second round of studio time, having missed the first phase at the end of 1973. This would be his last time in the studio with the Rolling Stones. Additional musicians included Nicky Hopkins and Ian Stewart on piano, and Billy Preston on piano and clavinet. The first song worked on was Time Waits for No One, which was recorded in only 1 or 2 takes. A new guitar effect was used by Keith and Mick Taylor for this song, the Synthy Hi-Fi Multi-Effects guitar processor. The Hi-Fi was designed by London company EMS, which stood for Electronic Music Studios Limited, in 1971. It was considered a synthesizer at the time, but really it is more like a multi-guitar effects processor. It could produce a large variety of effects including phasing, pitch vibrato, wah-wah, fuzz, octave up and down, and various types of modulation. The same effect was also used by Pink Floyd's David Gilmour in the studio and live. Mick Taylor used his Fender Stratocaster with rosewood fingerboard for the solo on Time Waits for No One, and then overdubbed another take of the solo through the Hi-Fi an octave below. Keith also plugged his guitar into the Hi-Fi on that song, as well as using it for the wah-wah effect on Fingerprint File. Mick Jagger played rhythm guitar, Mick Taylor played bass, and Bill Wyman produced the low growling sound on synthesizer. Other tracks worked on were It's Only Rock and Roll and If You Really Want to Be My Friend. The bulk of the album's bed tracks had already been worked on in phase 1 of the sessions at Musicland Studios in November of '73, where they laid down If You Can't Rock Me, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Till the Next Goodbye, Luxury, Dance Little Sister, and the beginning stages of Fingerprint File. The primary guitars used at the sessions by Keith were the wine red 1960 Gibson Les Paul Jr., the Ted Newman Jones Custom 5-string, the 1953 Fender Telecaster Malcolm, the 1954 Fender Telecaster Macabre, and the Gibson Les Paul Custom with Alnico 5 staple pickup in the neck, which Mick Jagger also used for rhythm guitar on Fingerprint File. Mick Taylor used his favored Gibson Les Paul Standard without the pickguard and the other Gibson Les Paul Standard, his Fender Stratocaster with rosewood board, and the walnut Gibson ES355 was also present in the studio. Keith is credited with playing bass on If You Can't Rock Me. Mick Taylor played bass on Fingerprint File, and Bill Wyman is credited with playing bass on all of the other songs on the album. Bill used his customized Dallas tuxedo bass on the sessions. For amplification, they used Silverface Fender twin reverbs and Ampeg VT22 combos. Recording sessions resumed from April 12th to May 2nd at Mick Jagger's house, Stargroves, where the band recorded overdubs with the Rolling Stones mobile truck. Engineers on these overdub sessions were George Takantz and Keith Harwood. From May 5th to May 27th, the tracks were mixed at Island Studios in London, with Keith Harwood at the board for the bulk of the album, and then Glenn Johns made his sole appearance mixing Fingerprint File. On June 1st, Michael Lindsay Hogg directed promo videos of Ain't Too Proud to Beg, Till the Next Goodbye, and It's Only Rock and Roll to be broadcast on TV over the next few months to promote the new album. On the mime videos of Ain't Too Proud to Beg and Tell the Next Goodbye, Keith uses his Les Paul Jr. and Mick Taylor used his Gibson Les Paul and a Martin acoustic. Mick Jagger strums a Gibson Hummingbird on Tell the Next Goodbye, and Bill Wyman used the Dallas Tuxedo bass on both songs. For the video of It's Only Rock and Roll, the band is dressed in sailor suits as they get immersed by soap suds. The band seemingly chose to shoot with guitars they no longer cared about. Keith is playing his Sunburst non-reverse Gibson Firebird 3 with P90s. Mick Taylor uses Keith's red Fender Bronco that only made one appearance during the first show of the 1972 STP tour, and Bill is playing his orange competition Fender Mustang bass, which he was no longer using by this point. Mick Taylor was becoming more disgruntled with the band, but stayed until the end of '74. Ronnie Wood slowly began migrating towards the Stones, but also didn't want to break up the Faces. He started hanging out regularly with Woody at his home, The Wick. This would become his home when he was in the UK, since he was still living in Switzerland. The Wick had a revolving door of musicians constantly coming in and laying down tracks while Woody was working on his first solo album. George Harrison, Eric Clapton, Keith Richards, Mick Jagger, and even Mick Taylor. Ron Wood and the band that played on his album decided to put on a pair of shows on July 13th and 14th in London, which would be filmed and recorded and then released much later in 2007 as the first Barbarians live from Kilburn. The band consisted of Woody and Keith playing guitar and sharing vocal duties, Ian McLagan of the Faces on keyboards, Willie Weeks on bass, and Andy Newmark on drums. Rod Stewart made a guest appearance singing on Mystifies Me and Take a Look at the Guy. Keith played his wine red Gibson Les Paul Jr. and also played Wurlitzer on one of the songs on the album written by him and Jagger, Act Together, while Mac played B3 Hammond organ, and Ian McLagan also played a Steinway grand piano, as he famously would destroy anything else if a promoter failed to procure one. Ron Wood used his Amadeus metal front on every song except for Shirley. He used a Fender Stratocaster with a rosewood board. For amplification, they used Ampeg SVTs. Here's a quote from Keith about No Stones tour in 1974. "I can't live without being on the road. Every minute spent off the road, I either turn into an alcoholic or a junkie because I've got nothing else to do. It's just a waste of time. I can turn into anything, a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a psychedelic treat, a Jehovah's Witness, a junkie. Anything can happen because I'm not doing that. That's what I do. I mean, most people that do things at least have the opportunity of doing it pretty regularly. We're in this unique, so they say, position of not being able to expose ourselves too much. So you've got these horrible extravagances of people saying, I don't want to work this year. That's why I did this album with Woody. I couldn't stand it anymore. To write off a whole fucking year in one sentence is stupid." On July 26th and 27th, the first single, It's Only Rock and Roll, backed with Through the Lonely Nights, was released in the UK and the US, reaching number 10 and number 16. The album, It's Only Rock and Roll, was released on October 16th in both the US and the UK, reaching number 1 in the US and number 2 in the UK. The track listing included If You Can't Rock Me, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, It's Only Rock and Roll But I Like It, Tell the Next Goodbye, Time Waits for No One, Luxury, Dance Little Sister, If You Really Want to Be My Friend, Short and Curlies, and Fingerprint File. From September to November, as the album was high in the charts, Keith announced, I'm changing my image, I'm finally getting my teeth fixed. He enjoys skiing while living in the mountains of Switzerland with Anita and Marlon, and during this time he also undergoes another cure and gets clean for the time being. On December 4th, at a party attended by the Stones, Mick Taylor informed Mick Jagger that he was leaving the band. Mick Taylor gave the Stones a much-needed shot in the arm when he arrived in 1969 and was a huge part of the Stones' sound. His beautifully melodic guitar playing would cement his legacy on 5 classic studio albums and a superb live album that many considered to be the peak period of the band. Unfortunately, due to disgruntlements over not receiving proper songwriting credits and other personal reasons, he decided that he wanted more. On December 12th, it was announced to the public that he had quit the Stones, and shortly after, he joined forces with Jack Bruce.
Mick, haven't you been thinking for some time about leaving the Stones?
Yes, it had been sort of in the back of my mind for quite a long time. I mean, my role as lead guitarist has always been very satisfying, especially playing live on stage, which is where I feel I made my greatest contribution towards the group. But as my own sort of music started to develop, it became more and more difficult to sort of express myself within the style of the group. And I mean, it's the style of the Stones that makes them so good, you know.
Yeah.
And
did you feel that style changed much when you joined?
Well, I feel it developed, you know. I think the whole band got progressively better as a live performing band on stage, and I think we reached a peak on the last European tour, which was very good. But you see, when I started to play piano and started to compose music on piano, that's when I sort of realized that I had a lot more musical potential that wasn't actually being used. And when the opportunity came up to play with Jack, I was, you know, very sort of enthusiastic about it, because we both have very similar tastes.
You must have enjoyed the time you spent with the Stones, I mean.
Oh, it was great. Fantastic.
As sessions at Musicland Studios were scheduled 2 days away, in desperation, Mick Jagger asked Ronnie Wood, who was also at the party, to join the band, but he had to decline for now due to his commitment to the Faces. Phase 1 of yet-to-be-named Black and Blue sessions were undertaken without a second guitarist from December 6th to the 15th. There they laid down tracks for Fool to Cry, Cherry O Baby, and Crazy Mama, and other tracks that would not make the album. Keith and Woody would also play one more show together on December 23rd with the Faces, again in London at the Kilburn State Theatre. This show is also filmed and released much later as Rod Stewart and Faces, the final concert with Keith Richards. This would be the Faces' final concert in the UK, with Keith as a special guest playing his Gibson Les Paul Jr. on covers of Chuck Berry's Sweet Little Rock and Roller, Etta James' I'd Rather Go Blind, and Sam Cooke's Twistin' the Night Away. Amplification was strictly Ampeg SVTs. I'm going to do a quick run through of Ronnie Wood's guitars and amps up until this point when he started playing with Keith. In one of his early bands, the Byrds, he had a customized white Fender Telecaster with op art stripes and checks. He also had an emerald green Telecaster body with a 12-string Dan Electro Bazuki neck bolted on. It is being held in this photo by Jeff Beck, which leads to his next band. The Jeff Beck Group, where he first hooked up with Rod Stewart and naturally played bass since Jeff Beck was on guitar. His basses were a Fender Jazz bass and an early Fender Telecaster or Precision bass. In the early days of the Faces, when he switched back to guitar, he had a Fender Telecaster and a red Fender Stratocaster, which were both stolen. At that point, he resorted to playing mostly custom-made guitars. Tony Zamatis was a luthier in England whose client list included George Harrison, Jimi Hendrix, Ronnie Lane, Eric Clapton, and Mark Bolan. Woody was one of the first adopters of a Zamatis guitar and had many built for him starting in 1970. The first was a Zamatis metal front guitar, which had a shape similar to a Les Paul, made with a mahogany body and neck with a bound ebony fingerboard. Over the front face of the body was a metal plate that was custom engraved by Danny O'Brien, a master gun engraver. Zemeckis handcrafted all of the metal parts on the guitar, including the bridge, tailpiece, pickup mounting rings, truss rod cover, and jack plate, and each were engraved by Danny O'Brien. The second guitar Zemeckis built for Woody was a single cutaway disc front model. This body shape was closer to a Telecaster with a deep cutaway and a metal circular disc on the front with a treasure map engraved on it. This guitar was also made with a mahogany body and neck and an unbound ebony fingerboard with dot inlays. It featured 3 humbuckers and 6 volume and tone controls, a 5-way selector switch, and a built-in preamp that was powered by a 9-volt. His third Zemeckis was a pearl front, which was similar to the metal front except the front of the body was inlaid with pearl and abalone, and it featured 3 single-coil pickups. He also had a Zemeckis 12-string acoustic guitar. Woody, like Keith, also used a see-through Ampeg Dan Armstrong plexi guitar, until he gave it away to David Bowie, thinking that he could get another one. Woody has been seen playing various Sunburst Fender Stratocasters, one with a rosewood fingerboard that he used with the first Barbarians live at Kilburn. He also used one with a maple fingerboard and a tremolo arm with the Faces. Then he acquired another Sunburst maple board Strat in the later years of the Faces that is a hardtail and doesn't have a tremolo system. Last is a Gibson Reverse Firebird 7, which features 3 mini Firebird humbuckers, a Lyre Maestro Vibrola, and a bound ebony fingerboard with block inlays. For amplification in the early years, he used a custom Hiwatt 100, which was stamped small faces prior to the shortening of the name. In the Faces, he used Ampeg SVTs that were painted white in the later years. And backstage, he is pictured playing through a blackface Fender Deluxe Reverb. The Faces would go on to tour the US twice in 1975 before parting ways. The Stones would go into 1975 down a guitarist and would take a brief break before reconvening for Phase 2 of the Black and Blue sessions in Rotterdam after the new year. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed it, and stay tuned for what's next.